prioritize, and do you look to see him doing it again here?
I do feel as though since Noble was against Team Dignitas, they probably prioritize their picks and bans a little bit differently than what they're going to pull out against an NA team that they're actually familiar with. I expect the same kind of elimination of the Colin, for example, and maybe even eliminating a Soul as well from Spacestation.
For me, this matchup comes down to which team gets the more aggressive jungle pick. Because Homie FA versus Skilladon is the big matchup for this one for me.
Yeah, that's something that we've seen a lot of, is how well can Homie FA impact these matchups. It felt like when Spacestation did get their wins, it was games where he kind of went off. But you're right, some of these meta bans that we've been seeing a lot here of, like the Colin, like Osiris, some of these solo lane focused ones, are those ones that you think they need to prioritize, or do they need to go in a little bit more focused to this particular matchup?
Well, we've seen earlier in this tournament that Hercules is coming back into the meta, and we saw a rumblings of Thanatos in a solo lane for one matchup. For Manor also came back in. So there is enough depth in the God pool that they don't really have to focus out the solo lane primarily, but making sure that you get a good matchup if you're going for those low priority picks can be beneficial.
And we've talked about this a lot whenever we're looking at Noble, but Moswell in particular there in the mid lane has a couple guns that he feels more comfortable than others. Do you think they might try and make sure they get something that Moswell's feeling comfortable on?
Well, that was another thing to keep in mind as well, because we've seen a lot of Soul out of Enns this week, and we've also seen a fair amount of Thoth from Moswell, but both of those mid laners actually have a couple of similarities when it comes to their playstyles, at least. Anderson and Moswell both seem to favor the farming route and then trying to play the more backline positioning before aggressing. Meanwhile, you'll typically see other mid laners that try and hop in on the initial engagements, but for these two in particular, I would really be interested to see if Noble tries to take priority of that Soul, because I know that it's available in Moswell's God pool, and it'd also be taking it away from Anderson.
And they're using a lot of their available time here for their first ban. And that's one thing that you don't really touch upon, is how important those first few bans are. Making sure you get them right can dictate if you've won or lost those picks and ban stages.
And Spacestation Gaming looking like they're going to be the ones that are pick banning first too, so they can try and ban a little bit more targeted, force Noble to ban out those meta ones, and then they can get exactly what it is they choose to prioritize. We saw from Dig last game though, they kind of adopted a bit of the elevate, that triple tank comp that we've been seeing a little bit more here, and I want to ask y'all too, how do you like that? Do you think that you should try and adopt the meta that sort of develops, or just stick to your own thing?
If it works, it works. And if it maybe works for your team, why not give it a shot, especially for Dignitas in the situation that they were in, where they hadn't had a single win the entire weekend despite being considered such a top-rated team. So they are mechanically strong enough players that they could very easily pick up a wide assortment of gods and still be able to play them efficiently enough to make a strategy work. I think the same story could be said here for Spacestation.
I think that there's a fine balance you have to find. You don't just carbon copy every single pick and every single ban, because they're just going to beat you with it, and you're not going to have as much practice on it as you would like. So just taking the overall idea of the composition, applying your own picks to it so that they fit that composition is what they should be looking for.
Looks like the very first thing we're seeing happen, though, Spacestation go ahead and ban away the Circuit pick. That's something we just saw Skilladon play. The Spacestation already taking a shot towards the enemy jungler.
Not to mention that Circuit also eliminates that fear of picking up a god such as Hercules or the Erlang Shens. They can have a pretty tough time against that Circuit, so without having to worry about ganks like that out of a jungler like Skilladon, who tends to also just hang around Walrus's end of the jungle more often, it's a relatively smart idea.
They do also take away Soul for Noble, so as you all correctly identified, Soul being highly contested between these two mid laners, so that's already been taken away.
And I'm still looking at other mid lane options here. We haven't seen the Ra being picked up. We saw it banned a couple times against a rival in the 3-0 against Dignitas. But it's still such a pivotal pick, especially for Andensto, who has one of the best Ras in the world.
Thoth also getting banned out, this time for Spacestation. Another one that we've seen have some high impact, but Thoth we kind of saw also struggle a little bit with their sieging on the teams that had Thoth. Do you think it's right to go ahead and focus Thoth out this early?
I think it's smart to do because of the fact that it's Moswell who you're playing against in mid lane. He is just such a talented Thoth player that you just don't want to take that kind of risk when he has that final judgment, and an ultimate like that can really turn a game upside down despite how massive of a lead the other team might have. It's just not worth the risk in these situations.
And Origin is a very safe first pick. He has a good ability to into Leap has good long-range damage, as well as good early pressure in that mid lane. It can fit onto pretty much every single comp as well, which is why we see it prioritized so early.
Raijin already taken in, and Noble will respond by grabbing the Fafnir Hu Yi. Those are two that we see picked together. If they're lucky enough to have them both available often, they got some good synergy.
And loving both of these picks as the response from Noble. Fafnir going to be able to provide a lot of presence in team fights. Jigs as well won't be able to have that option himself, so the aggressive stance from Noble is really here to try and make a statement, and throwing Wowie onto a hunter like Hu Yi, where you can actually look to take those early boxing matches against Zetman, maybe even invade that jungle by himself, depending on how Spacestation are trying to shift their attention on the map.
And what's more, people in the audience might not realize that using your picks can also technically be bans against the other team. If you're taking Fafnir for yourself, you're denying Jigs his best god, and that's exactly what happened here.
And also denying Zapman being on the Hu Yi too. I mean, we all know just how well he can play, just how quickly he can put a couple highlights on the screen, so limiting those ricochets, so it's only working for Noble. Not surprised to see that at all. They got that Fafnir Hu Yi, but also not to understate on Fafnir though, that Draconic Corruption, that immunity, we saw it come in big in some earlier sets earlier, so Fafnir has a lot he can do.
Very pensive Space Station drafting phase here, though. They're clearly putting a lot of thought into every single selection that they're making, which, I mean, you kind of just expect to be the case when they know just how much is on the line. And the RDO Ganesh, I am not entirely sold on taking RDO for Scary D in the solo lane, because it's kind of revealing early on to Noble that they're planning on throwing a Guardian in that solo, which means that Walrus could potentially have the option to just pick something very aggressive against it.
And this is a very scary Morrigan pick right now. If I'm Space Station, I'm looking at banning Ratatasker right away. It's just such a synergistic pick.
Yeah, when you not just one through the Cosmos, but two to go along with the Morrigan can really be a nightmare to deal with. Either way, we haven't seen too much focus just yet on the jungle as far as picks are concerned, even though we had that Circuit banned away. So the tankier Space Station going up against Noble, who have a lot of damage.
Wouldn't be surprised to maybe see a Ratatasker ban happen here, considering that Skeleton would probably start to favor that selection, considering that they already have the Morrigan picked up. Space Station making the smart move as well, eliminating that Najah. That's another one of Skeleton's go-tos, and I really just want to see the Ratatasker ban following that up, because a double Rat ultimate composition from Noble could be very difficult for Space Station to handle.
As much as I would like to have seen Noble ban out some junglers, there's also potential that you come up against something you don't have practice against. Some of the more meta picks you're consistently playing against in scrims, you'll obviously have strategies developed to defeat them. But if you're coming up against a Bakasura, which you have no idea is coming, you have to think on the fly and come up with a strategy right there and then.
Noble turning a little bit more of an eye towards Zapman, it would appear, with two Hunter bans coming out, the Amuzin Cobb and the Jingwei being taken off the table. And there's that Ratatasker ban that we were looking for. So Space Station now not going to have to worry about the double Rat.
It's just to be expected. Whenever you see a Morrigan selection come through, you think, okay, what is the Morrigan trying to transform into? And taking a look at the gods that have already been selected, Fafnir, RDO, Ganesh, not exactly ideal. Hu Yi, there's some possibilities, because Double Suns just covers a massive area for zone effect, and there's always the Raijin damage potential as well, but you always just got to keep in mind those jungle selections, because if there's one thing that teams never want to see flying at them, especially mid laners, it's the double Ravens, the double Rats, double Najah ults. It's just always too much damage to try and handle.
How about double Susano?
Still not fun.
No, that's almost equally as scary when you got to worry about this high mobility jungler that Noble have now picked up for themselves to try and give Skeleton a chance to have a big impact.
But to be completely fair, even though double Susano thread is pretty spooky, you also have to consider that Susano doesn't fare the greatest against the RDO with that cripple field. And not to mention that she also has that ferocious roar to help catch out an opponent in the middle of a combination. Plus there's the Ganesh silence for the follow-up. Answer's going to have the taunt on those Taiko drums from Raijin. There's a decent amount of CC available at the Space Station already to really try and help mitigate some of the damage that a double Susano combination could even try and bring out.
And don't forget, with the Morrigan, you're going to be leveling up your second ability, the Dark Omen, anywhere from levels 1 to 9 until you get it maxed out. So you really have to think about which other characters do you have in the game that have their second ability. And so far, the only one that you're really going to be transforming into until level 12 would be that Raijin, considering Raiju is good damaging ability with Susano. Wind Siphon, using that for more of an initiation with Hu Yi, Mark of the Golden Crow. you're not using that as your main primary damage tool.
Thor and Hachiman locked in here for Space Station Gaming, and for my money, the name of the game kind of seems to be Control coming out from Space Station. Between the Thor, the Ganesh, and the RDO, they might not have too bad a hard time locking down that Susanoo.
And this looks like a draft that is going to deal a lot of crowd control in a very short space of time. Pretty much whenever those Dharmic Pillars come out, you can either expect Space Station to keep the fight going because they're finding the picks, or they just have the immediate disengage to fall back on as well. There is just so much peel readily provided for Space Station that it is going to be fairly difficult for Noble to try and handle if their positioning isn't on point.
And we've seen a bit of dissension here about Hachiman so far. Is Hachiman really strong? Is Hachiman not sure? They've gone with some other hunter pick. Alpha Jackal, yourself, where do you land here on this Hachiman pick?
I think Hachiman is good in the right hands, and Zapman is one of those right hands.
Oh, yeah.
You saw what he was able to do with the Jingwei into an unfavorable matchup like a Hui. He just goes to the back camps, steals it away, and then has pressure instantly. If he's got something in mind to deal with this Hui, with this Hachiman, he's going to bring it out here.
Now, we talked about how this Thor pick that could be pretty impactful here for Homefei. It's something he works a lot and likes to use. But also now Morgan has a semi-global she could borrow at any time too if she feels like going into that Thor.
Something about junglers and Thors, man, whenever it's on the line. And we already got a taste of Homefei's Thor the other day in their set against Luminosity. Granted, it didn't pan out in the end for Space Station because Baskin just had a phenomenal turnaround. So hopefully Homefei's not going to suffer any PTSD from that exact moment. It's all going to depend on how Maswell plays this Morgan.
Amaterasu is the final pick coming out for Noble. That's very likely going to be going over to that solo lane pick, but now that we've had a chance to see both rosters get finalized out, how you feeling, Taco? Space Station or Noble?
I'm really digging Space Station's draft because of the control effect that they have. I love Noble to death. I love Maswell to death, but I feel like Space Station's going to take this one home.
All right, Alpha, who you got?
I feel if Noble are able to execute their higher execution comp better, then Noble should take it, otherwise Space Station.
All right, we're a little bit split over here on the desk. What about you, casters? Who do you think's going to take this one away?
Thanks so much, Finch. And joining me here on the cast is none other than the legendary, one-of-a-kind, Polar Bear Mike.
Hey, Hidden, how are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good.
So you're in the finals tomorrow, first of all.
Yes, sir.
Second of all, if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. He's got a pretty good Twitter game these days. Just after a certain time, he gets a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes it gets a little iffy in there, but I try my best.
So Space Station Gaming up against
really.
Noble. Noble obviously out Mike, but then again, Space Station, they have a very outside chance, but it's a long road for him to go.
Yeah, I feel like looking at the drafts, I actually liked Nobles a lot more, but I think because Space Station has more to lose, they have more to play for, they can actually still get a three-way tiebreaker scenario. I think that they'll come out strong.
So the three-way tiebreaker is still available, but it's going to be important, first of all, for Space Station Gaming to get this game under their belt. The way Noble have played so far, Mike, we've seen, you know, a couple of issues for him. Even in that Dignitas game, they had such a huge lead, but they let it go.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. They kind of just, like, thought Dig was going to give up because they got such a big lead, and then Dig just came back and then turned it on them completely.
So what do you want to do on this cast, Mike? Do you want to do play-by-play or do you want to do analysis?
Ooh,
I think you should do play-by-play.
I'll stick to analysis. I'll be good with that.
No. I think you should do play-by-play.
Maybe if the time is right.
Okay. I'll make sure the time's right every single time. Obviously, if I just finish a sentence and a team fight starts, you're going to have to jump in and do it, okay?
Yeah, of course. That's fine.
Cool. That was a bad idea. So start the game, Homie FA Scaredy on the right-hand side. We're going to see Walrus and Skeelydon on this right-hand side as well. Walrus playing the Amaterasu. He's played it a little bit more just lately.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a pick that has kind of gone away from the meta for a little bit because you don't really have that great ability clear on waves and all that, but he's picked it a couple times now, I think, in this round robin.
Mike, with that actually happening with Amaterasu now, is that something to do with, like, the early game isn't as huge as it used to be? Like, you can get behind and still get back into it?
Well, the early game used to be previously in the spring when she would be picked up in support and solo. You used to fight a lot more at level 1. Now you can still fight, but it's more about clear, and she's not the fastest clear god. On jungle buff she is, which is what you saw them do right there.
Sure.
And now go get the wave under tower, but on the actual wave, her clear isn't the greatest.
So in lane, just basically farm under tower, very, you know, old school. That's what we've seen
Right.
it from Amaterasu before, but it's not doom and gloom, really, if you start the box.
And she actually got a buff before before this tournament with her cooldown on her 2 going down a couple seconds. So it is interesting that Walrus is the only one to pull it out. I would think that a couple more people would try it.
Well, Homie FA playing the Thor this time round. How have you felt about Homie FA's play? You know, obviously, the cast have been talking a little bit about him playing the Assassins.
Homie's been really hot and cold, I feel like, this entire weekend. I thought that versus Luminosity on Wednesday that he had a couple great games on the Bakasura and things like that. And then he kind of just disappears a little bit. So it's really interesting. I think Homie's had some good games in this even though they're 0-2 currently, I think he's had some good games already in the round-robin play.
Well, let's see how he does in this one. Very important game for Spacestation. Zapman was tweeting himself about the fact that he thinks they're out and the team is a little bit demoralized, but there is always that outside shot. If you remember last year at Super Regionals, LG made it through by the skin of their teeth, relying on results elsewhere.
And you never really know. I believe last year we were one result away from having a 5-way tie, so you never really know anything could happen. And I think if Spacestation comes in prepared today and they try really hard, as I say, that Jigs is getting engaged on Skeleton, gets a first blood at their back harpies, that is not good for Spacestation. That's not what you want.
You can do the play-by-play. Look at that. Nice
I kind of can just do it all, you know?
Yeah, Jigs just out of position. That was the biggest issue there. The shell even used as well, but didn't keep him alive long enough. And that first kill going to Skeleton, quite important, but the Hunters are dueling.
It looks like Wowie is actually getting the better of Zap here. Neither Hunter's level 5, so Zapman's is probably just going to get away. I think Wowie jumped in to start that, so he can't chase it out.
Yeah, I think that's one thing fans at home like, why didn't he jump? Why didn't he jump? But,
it was definitely on cooldown.
If he was on cooldown, you would have guaranteed Wowie would have jumped in to that right-hand side. Homie FA is going to swing to the right-hand side here. A bit more pressure onto Walrus and pick up some farm. Obviously, in that lane matchup, that was going to be the case. Now, Wowie choosing to try and slow this wave down.
I think he actually could have froze that a little harder. I'm not sure. He's like last hitting the creeps, which is actually speeding up, pushing it towards Zap, but Hoi definitely wins this matchup early game, I think, so allowing Zap to basically get a wave under tower, I don't really think that was a good decision by Wowie.
But on top of that as well, those banners that Hachiman's going to bring to the battlefield as well, not just useful for wave clear, but that attack speed actually is impactful.
Yeah, they actually do have a pretty good objective burn with the Hachiman, but the rest of the team comp doesn't really have the greatest objective burn, I suppose. But if they can CC like a Fafnir or something and then drop that, the attack speed still will matter to a Thor.
Skeely going to come across to the right-hand side. Stun comes out from Walrus and now knocked up in the sky, but Homie lands beautifully to turn this one around. Scary D now looking to turn this one around, and he can't find the last life tap. So Walrus will escape.
Walrus got really... I'm going to go ahead and say that's luck. No way he knew he was going to live there, but... Actually, really interesting.
You
that
can't
Scary
say
D
that. You're a caster
now. Absolutely lucky. Interesting as well that Scary D actually elected to get the Aegis. That's something that he did with RDO versus Luminosity. I think that was into a Poseidon, though. But in this matchup, getting that Aegis completely saved him. I wonder if Walrus and Skeleton had recognized that, because it seemed like they pretty much got baited by it.
And what's the reason for the Aegis? I mean, obviously, you normally see that, like you said, for Krakens and things. There's not like a Kraken on this team. I mean, Andis is going to be doing taunt probably more often than necessarily
right, yeah.
damage.
I think something that's interesting is that when RDO first came out, everyone thought she was broken, and then people just found ways to kill her. And I think Aegis is a good counter to that, where she doesn't need any like real health sustain or anything. She already has in-kit healing. She already has a ton of like lockdown and stick potential. So if you can just get a defensive relic to stop people from going on you, I think Scary loves it a lot.
And I guess with that Aegis too, those extra 3 seconds that it technically buys you, it does mean that you can turn that around and then get your cooldowns up for another rotation.
Right.
Well, back towards the mid lane now. Still Noble with that one kill of the game. It has been a bit of action out of Spacestation Gaming and Noble so far. Mainly Noble on the aggressive, Spacestation looking to respond.
Also interesting that Skilly and Wubbin invaded Spacestation's back harpies and got a first blood on Jigs, but he's actually still out farming, Jigs is still ahead of farm with Wubbin, and he was ahead of Maswell as well, and that doesn't really make sense at all to me as to how that's happening.
Is Ganesh, though? I mean, Ganesh does have a little bit of a better idea of getting experience because of the passive?
Kind of, but to me, it must be that they're keeping better control of the neutral camps. Jigs has been in the mid lane pretty much the entire game. You see the Hunters have pretty much gotten solo farm. They're level 8 and level 7.
You're right, and I was thinking about that too. I mean, Fafnir, at the end of the day, he does have that coerce, which means you can tag a teammate, leave, and still get experience from the wave too, which is very, very useful for him. Left-hand side, Zapman just going to be continuing to farm under the tower, going for the full boots option here. We're seeing this out of a lot of Hachimans here over going for the Devour's Gauntlets early, Mike. Do you know why?
I think it just depends. If you can't get that Devos on your first back or so, having the boots up for when the buffs respawn is a lot more impactful. And I think also Hunters haven't really been fighting that early game in this meta, so I think it's fine to delay the Devo Gauntlets a little bit.
Makes sense. And Andis already got that Book of Toth on Lime. Seen a couple of Warlock Slash this week. Moswell under a bit of pressure in the mid lane here. Nice wall out of Homie FA. But unfortunately, he won't be able to get towards Moswell in time until the pickup is good. Skeely, I'm going to turn this one around attemptively. Jumps back in. Homie didn't know that was coming, but Skeely plays it well. Drums of War out from Andinster. Not going to connect. In comes Wubbin to try and make sure Zap can't pick up the kill. Skeely will live, but Moswell removed.
Yeah, if Maswell had just ran into the Fire Giant side jungle, he actually would have lived there, but Jigs with a great ultimate to cut him off when he turned it into the Hachiman and then horsed out. Also interesting, Maswell throughout all of their games has pretty much gone Warlock Satch. This game, a much more aggressive route. He went for the Sands of Time Bumbas, and he actually went Traveler's Boots as well to try to get a little bit more gold and extend or accelerate his build.
You were saying as we were watching picks and bans too, mate. Like, we've not really seen much Moswell play Morrigan before. So this
Yeah,
is
it's a guy that he can play. Anyone who has scrimmed this team knows that he can play it. But yeah, normally they elect to put him on things like
under pressure in the mid lane right now, being pressured again by Homiefe. Homiefe did have to use his beads there aggressively, but Skeely turns up once
huge
again.
too, wow.
2 was good out of Skeely to try and pull him in, but Homie still managed to
Yeah, Homie just mashing his one button to try to catch that. That could have been really bad if Homie was not able to teleport to that hammer.
But now Skeely's going to rotate around to the right side, run into Scary D. And now an early bead from Skeely there, looking for pressure onto Scary. In the end, Scary's going to be able to walk away and gets a free beads out of Skeely.
Yeah, definitely a questionable beads by the Don, but in the end, it's all right. Homie has his beads down as well, so you'll likely see both of these junglers just relax for a little bit.
Is that what we're going to call him on the cast? The Don?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just every now and then.
Just when he's good plays or bad plays?
Yeah, okay, from now on it'll be a good play is he's the Don, yeah.
Cool, we've corrected that issue for the time. But left-hand Harpy's about to spawn Zapman in position, but Wubbin and Skeelydon on the way round to try and contest this. Bit of aggression between the two as Jigs drops the ultimate down. Wubbin still under pressure, though.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's pretty much going to be a full disengage, that they're fighting so much over this neutral farm. Normally you don't see that. You'll see the buffs go onto the red buff, the speed buff, and all that. So, and also interesting that Jigs tried to initiate that fight with his jungler not having beads.
Well, it didn't work out well for Spacestation game. It's still 1-1, though. Gold lead is in Spacestation's favor as it stands. And I guess something like I mentioned, you might have been Jigs, but Jigs are now a little bit further behind in experience than that of Wubbin as he just hits level 8. Where is this lead really coming from?
Just neutral farm, I think, for the most part. I think every mid laner and support has been to every single neutral camp. The jungler trying to show up as well. Skilly probably just going to poke out Jigs a little bit. Nothing crazy going to happen here.
Just saw Homie on the right-hand side as well. Look for a bit of pressure onto Walrus once again. You can see Homie's really putting work in this game, being everywhere on the map, trying to initiate stuff. It's not necessarily working out, but at least he's putting aggression.
I actually like the way he's playing it a lot. Even if there's not kill potential in the Walrus, you can at least give Scary a lot of lane pressure, and if you can kind of get that lane pressure as RDO and dominate and outtrade the Ama, then I think Scary will be able to out-rotate and do a lot in these team fights. Well,
let's see how this goes on, because Scary D now level 10, working towards his build. More than likely, Breastplate of Valonex, cooldown reduction, very useful for an RTO.
For sure. And also, it's interesting, you had mentioned that Zapman had elected to rush the boots. Wowie actually did the opposite, so he's a few stacks ahead of him, about 30 stacks on that Devourer's Gauntlet. So I wonder if Noble might elect to take an early fight out of Gold Fury. They have the Morgan and the Fafnir. They have a lot of good objective shred, and they can burn it down with the Hoi Yacht if they wanted to take that.
Without giving too much away about E-United's playstyle and what you guys favor here, but like the Gold Fury in the early game now, is it as impactful as it used to be? Do you feel like you have to go for it as early? Is it rewarding?
I feel like if you can invade buffs, that's normally a little bit better because you're denying from the other team. As I say, that Skilly goes in. Looks like it's just a bunch of nothing. Jigs will throw it on his ult just to disengage
you
pretty much.
You can't say it's a bunch of nothing.
Yeah, it's a bunch of nothing.
No, you can't do that. You're supposed to get excited for the fans at home, Mike. Come on, you can't just do that.
I don't want to give them a false hope for a bad fight. Sorry.
Listen, we have to do that every day, okay? Especially when some of your teams play as well. Left-hand side, they can see Wubbin wrapping around the back to continue placing wards down around this area now and again to make sure there's some pressure onto Zapman. A lot of protection for Wowie on this left-hand side, just in case Homie does come visit.
Yeah, I think Wowie's actually had a majority of the lane pressure. As I say, that Skilly goes in, catches Scary D's dash, ults him. He does have the Aegis available, so I don't know if Scary D will go down here. The ult coming out of Walrus, and it looks like Scary will be finding a Thor dunk out from Homie. Walls in, Skilladon forces his beads. Looks like Skilladon's going to go down here. Huge turn play from Scary and Homie.
Yeah, that just worked out well. I thought it was going to go for nothing now with Homie FA missing that ultimate. Splitting the uprights between the two. It did cause a couple of problems for him for a moment, but the Aegis came into play again, Mike.
Right, yeah, he just is able to bait out so many cooldowns with that, and I think Noble has to be really careful about committing that much into Scary D. It happened to them once, Walrus barely lived, and now they really pay for it this time.
Got to be a little bit careful around the speed buff now. They're trying to get it down before Homie if he can get over here, as well as the mid lane and jungler out of Space Station 2. But it's too little too late for Moswell, who will drop down. Homie FA has the speed buff around his waist, which tells you they did manage to steal it too.
Yeah, and that play just is kind of a lack of experience to me from Noble. Whenever your jungler dies like that, they're always like, please defend my speed, I need that. But whenever you take that 4v3, you're just allowing Space Station to snowball like that. I believe Homie actually stole the speed, and then, oh yeah, he did.
How'd you deal with Scream then? So when Scream dies and he goes, defend my speed, what do you guys say?
I just say, you're dead, it's your own fault, and then peace out.
Okay, so that's how you deal with your own speed buff. He's like, if it goes down, it's the jungler's own fault.
Yeah, he understands it.
Okay, well, now a bit more aggression out of Space Station around this Gold Fury side. It's mainly because the Oracles are spawning. Wubbin and Wowie will be here to try and defend, but it is against 3, and it looks like Spacestation will get both of those there, so Noble not able to get them just yet.
You were mentioning the way I kind of look at Gold Fury, and I can't give too much away, obviously, but I think that keeping Oracle control anytime there's like a Fafnir Hoi type thing in the game, they have a lot of objective burn, so Space Station to keep control of those Oracles will deny Noble the opportunity to kind of go for those Gold Fury rush plays and set things up around there, and that's huge because I actually think Space Station's comp is going to scale a little bit better.
It's funny when you think about it too, about like how the additions of certain things like Oracles and the Portal Demon affected the map, and the one thing that always stands out, those Oracles, they do provide a free ward, which against somebody like a Thor who loves to ult from the Gold Fury pit means you want to control him anyway, just in case you can try and get an ult.
Yeah, I mean, not only are you denying Gold Fury plays and getting that vision, but you're also seeing when people come to ward your jungle, they have to walk through that pit a lot of the time, and also the ganks, as you mentioned.
That looks like a bit of a Portal Demon look from Noble Esports for a second here. Team members going to pull it. Wubbin and Walrus. You mentioned Walrus in the jungle. It ain't going to be too bad on an Amaterasu, especially at level 12.
Well, yeah, and also both of these characters, the Fafnir and the Amaterasu, as they commit to this Portal Demon, have really good objective shred. You're seeing that now, 2 tanks basically burning it as Andy comes around the corner. I think that was a little odd. I believe Maswell probably needed to be there for them to commit to that. So pretty much a wasted ultimate from Wubbin just to get the Portal Demon to like 30%.
It was good to see Andy just sniff that one out as well. He just had an idea. He's like, hang on a second, we're pressuring Maswell and Skeleton in the mid lane. Where's the jungler and solo laner gone? So that works out well there for Noble Esports, just to, well, not for Noble, for Space Station, to not give up a free objective for nothing. Zapman, level 14 now, just a little bit ahead of Wowie, but Wowie does have another wave coming into him there, so that should even things up again.
If I'm Space Station and I see that play, I would be forcing pretty much a Gold Fury as soon as I can. 3 people on Noble don't have their second relic because they're not level 12 yet. You have an ultimate down from Fafnir. I feel like they have a great power play opportunity here if they go for it.
Well, it doesn't seem to be the case right now. We've got 2 members on the right-hand side. Homie FA looking to pressure under Walrus under the tower. That's going to force Wubbin to rotate over here to help out Walrus a little bit. Scary is going to put a bit of focus in. They do know his ultimate's down here, so could put a bit more pressure on as Andy will get a kill on Skeely in the mid lane with the assistance of Jigs there. Just at guess what time there, Mike? The speed buff spawning.
Yep, and it's going to happen again. They're probably going to come into this fight. Wubbin already low. I like that he's backing up this time. They can't really do much about it. However, since Wubbin is around here low, you might see them go towards the Portal Demon, but it looks like they'll just go back to farming.
Well, the mid-harpies are coming up on both sides as well. Well, we will at least get the left-hand ones before Space Station can sniff that out. But Andy with pressure in mid, and now Homie FA coming over, looking to poke out Moswell a little bit. That won't be too bad. Right-hand side, Walrus trading out, but Homie bit off a bit more than he could chew there overall. Had to use his Aegis, a little bit worried about the pressure coming out from Wowie.
Yeah, he didn't have vision of Wowie coming around the corner there, so he does have to use his Aegis, but not the end of the world. He's still got good poke, and he still has map pressure, and with how the game has gone so far, I don't think he'll be needing it for a bit.
Looks like Zap did just manage to steal that one away by the looks of it as well. Just over the wall with that banner. In comes Wubbin though, looking for a potential hammer, but Jigs with a silence straight away. The hammer was still good out of Wubbin though, and Zap under pressure. Well, we're going to jump on as well. The shell is pretty useful, but now he's going to have to turn tail with the horse and get away from the danger zone.
Oh, he actually came back in. If Wubbin was still looking at him, he might have been able to turn that. Andy, though, right by, gets the Oracles. Or actually, Wubbin may be able to steal one of them away, and it looks like he will try to take control of it.
Oh, he did. Just 1-for-1 split there overall. Right-hand side, you can see Skilladon's now come over here to soak some experience. He's currently level 11. A lot of that's down to the 2 deaths, and after both those deaths, he lost his speed buff twice, which is why he's so far
Yeah,
behind.
all of Noble actually getting a little bit out-farmed. I believe Zap is also about half a level up on Wowie. They're both 15 right now. Wubbin also about a level and a half down on Jig, so they're all just kind of passively getting out-farmed from that neutral farm that I was mentioning early. The Oracles and the mid-Harpies not really going in their favor.
So you mentioned about Space Station game and they scale it okay into the mid to late game here? Is
Yeah,
that how
for
you
sure.
feel? Are
Yeah, I
they
think
going to outscale Noble overall? Or?
I think Space Station's mid-game until we get to about 20 to 25 minutes, I think they're a bit stronger. Once we see Noble get to 25 minutes and Morgan can start to one-shot people and we have Fafnir get his items online while we get his kin size, then I think Noble's probably a bit stronger, but it's really close.
Oh, a bit of a difference in jungler builds as well. They are both playing assassins, but 2 different types to an extent. Obviously, Homie FA here going for the Heartseeker, which has seen a rise to prominence a little bit more, whereas Skeleton going for the Hydra, which we've not seen too much of just lately.
I think another item that's interesting is that Walrus actually elected to go Pestilence in the second item right after his boots against the Ardio, but the Ardio is the only person really healing there, and normally on Amaterasu you want to get a bit of CDR, something like a Genji's guard. I think maybe it would have been a little bit better.
It is good for magical protection though, I guess. And
Yeah,
you're going to be dealing with Raijin too?
I think it's pretty close. I believe Genji is actually, with the health included, would probably make you a little bit tankier and also giving you the cooldown to pop your 1 Azama and get that healing. So personally, I don't like the choice from Walrus, but I think it is fine if they're trying to engage on Scary. We've seen that a couple times, seen the Aegis come into play. So it'll be really tough to kill Scary, but the Pestilence surely will help with that.
And I guess that's the thing with Season 4 now. There's a lot of builds that are viable, even though it's personal taste more than anything else of like which way you would like to go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the items are pretty much just situational, and a lot of them are very strong, so I don't think it's horrible for him to go Pestilence here. It looks like Wubbin's actually going to get poked out a bit in the jungle, the speed buff coming up again, and you see Spacestation putting 4 people over here.
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure out of Scary on that tier 1 tower on the right-hand side too, which forced Skeleton over, but once again, Skeleton seems to die whenever his speed buff spawns. The good news is his team did secure the speed for it, give it over to Moswell, but in comes Homie FA looking for the dunk and the extra pressure.
Yeah, he's just going to force them out here. Gets a good wall onto Wubbin. We see Andy just force out Wubbin's ultimate with the Tycho drums. Wubbin actually getting completely committed on. Walrus gets a good ult to peel for him. Forces Scary D off. And Zapman, the classic Zapman dive between the towers. He'll pay for that. Scary D going back in, and it looks like it'll just be a 2-for-1 trade in favor of Space Station.
And the pickup kill actually was from Moswell, who turned into Hachiman for Zapman to actually pick up that kill with the autos as he ran away, and the banner as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when Moswell's getting engaged on that. He's going on to the Hachiman. You would think you'd maybe pick a tankier target like the Amo or like the Ardio to try to get out if he's in danger like that.
Yeah.
Also, Skilly at the start of this engagement for the 3rd time now, just completely alone, not grouping with his team. And he didn't even use his beads there when he died. He just ate all of their damage, all their CC. Really questionable for Skilly to not group with his team. And
that's where the big difference really seems to be in the jungle right now. Homie FA versus Skeleton, that's 3 speed buff attempts at being stolen away, but 3 kills onto Skeleton in a row at the same time as that speed buff has spawned. It's been a bit of a tricky situation. Because of that, it means Walrus is being isolated a little bit more on this right-hand side, meaning that tower is really falling down now.
Yeah, I'd like to see Space Station start to convert this lead into some objective forces or go for some pick plays. Right now, they're kind of only playing for farm. You see the tower is low in the solo side. I feel like at any moment, if Homie chose to rotate over there and force a wave into that tower, is Scary they could take that tower.
We've noticed with Space Station this tournament, at least, Mike, as well, is that most of the time they seem to be a counterpunch team. They don't like to be the initiators. I mean, this game, even now, they're kind of being forced into initiating, but they don't want to. They'd rather let the other team seem to do it for them.
Yeah, generally, I mean, that's just their style. When you have Zap and Andy and they're each extremely confident that they can carry a game, they just want to keep farming and keep getting ahead. So they are a bit of a more reactive team, but they can still make plays if they're given the opportunities that we've seen in this game.
This could be one. Wubbin in a bit of trouble here, knocked up, doesn't get a chance to use his ultimate
forces the ult out of Skeleton. That's a big deal. Now that that ultimate's down, Space Station has a big advantage. Zapman and Andy are both going to be much safer with that ult down.
A little bit surprised by that too, because that was an ult used by Skeleton to defend Wubbin, who's Fafnir. Like, he could ult himself if he needed to, and, you know, keep himself out of the danger.
Yeah, speaking of Wubbin on the Fafnir, I had mentioned earlier that they didn't have their level 12 relics yet. He actually just got that, and he did something that Raffer was doing yesterday with the horrific emblem. I like that a lot. You can upgrade it, reduce the damage from Space Station a lot. Sure. If you can get that on the Raijin, his ult will do much less damage. A really interesting pickup.
And as long as they play around that sprint as well that you can see for Jigs, it can come into play even more so, because just slowing down the mobility of everybody, especially when Noble do have a pretty mobile composition here that they've put together for themselves, especially additional to the Amaterasu that's going to give everybody a movement speed.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the way that Andy and Homie are playing this. They're playing the corners and going for a lot of poke, just kind of choking Noble out, keeping ward pressure around their side of the jungle. So I think it's a really nice job. Probably see a similar play right here. Gets a good wall on the Skilly, but I don't think he'll go in verse 2.
Yeah, cancels out the pull from Skilly on there. Right-hand side, you can see Walrus starting to do a bit of proxy farming now, but that proxy farming could come back to haunt him.
See Scary D rotating here right out of base. It looks like Space Station wants to force this fight. They feel like they have an advantage. The Susanoo ult that we mentioned earlier is actually just about to come off cooldown probably within the next 15 seconds, so we might see a fight break out.
Let's see if that works out. Mid lane, though, Homie FA under pressure from Walrus coming in around the back there. Cancels out the spin to win, but the rest of Noble falling back. Meanwhile, 3 members of Space Station still on this gold, and only Worry here to try and help out.
Yeah, and it looks like Space Station's actually getting a much better trade from the Skeleton actually on his speed. A 5v4. Homie Faye dunks in on Moswell on the back, forces both relics. A big ult to peel for Walrus.
Wow. Big old commit there for Moswell more than anything else there, Mike. They've all went all in. And now it seems that Noble have got to run away. Their composition is in tatters. The Thorns from Walrus won't keep him alive long enough. Zapman gets a double kill as he picks up Wubbin too. And meanwhile, Skeleton, well, at least he got his own speed buff this time, but he's not going to be able to get involved in this.
Scary D is just doing so much in these fights. He was crippling the entire front line of Noble, just chasing them out, doing massive amounts of damage, and even now zoning Wowie at his own tier 2. Really, again, a big issue. I mentioned the poke in the middle lane. Skilly got forced to about 40% health, had to go to his speed. It allowed Space Station to take a 5v4, get Gold Fury low, and then Wowie doesn't have that ult. He used it to contest the gold, and then Space Station just gets a free fight.
Now, there is 8,000 experience and just under 4,000 gold lead for Space Station now. We talk about gold. We used to talk about gold a lot in the old days, but it's not as important now as much as experiences.
Yeah, now it's pretty much all experience, and now you'll actually see Space Station pick up the Portal Demon with people being dead on Noble, as well as the Relic advantage. in favor of Spacestation. Skilladon uses the ult to try to secure a little bit too early there. And now we'll see Homie, now that Skilly is poked out and Walrus had now just respawned, pushes a wave into the solo tower. That'll be very close to getting that, though it looks like Skilly is going right for it.
Yeah, Skilly should be able to get at least stop that for the time being, but it's 9-2 now. That experience lead is actually being shown on characters that you want them to really be on, mainly Homie FA versus Skilladon. And you've got a little bit of a lead for Scary D now over Amaterasu. It's not going to matter for them individually, but when it comes to team fights, you know, being behind as a solo laner means you can't frontline as hard as you would like to.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with the experience and the gold deficit, with the 5k gold lead, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, it's a big deal, but if you just look at the experience, both duo laners 2 levels up, mid laners 1 level up, Homie Faye 2 levels on Skilly, and Scary D just got 2 levels up on Walrus. So the experience massively in favor of Spacestation.
Biggest item thing that I can see this tournament as well, Mike, honestly looking through it, has been the Stone of Gaia. Did everybody know about it and just didn't want to talk about it because they wanted to run it, or has everyone just started to adapt it because of it?
I think people are just copying Deathwalker, honestly.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I thought, but
yeah, I
I
think it's really good on Gladiator, on Gladiator Warriors where you get that extra healing from the passive.
Sure.
I'm not sure I really like it in this situation. For Scary, I actually like it because if Susano commits on him and he has those 2 knockups, he can regen a lot. As for Walrus, the only knockup is really just the Ganesha 3, and I doubt Ganesha is going to be dashing into Walrus on most of these fights, likely using it on the carries or other people.
But I don't think people are just getting it for the passive. It feels like it's actually the regen that we're seeing it more for. It seems to be with these sort of characters we're seeing picking it up.
Yeah, the passive regen is really nice, and also now that we've seen these tankier junglers, as you see Homie has the Void Shield, stuff like that, we're not seeing as many Brawlers beat sticks anymore, so the healing comes into play much more.
And obviously it keeps you in combat a little bit longer. You don't have to return to base if you can stay out of combat for a little while. That regen does pay dividends. Does that man on the left-hand side? I can just put a little bit more pressure on.
Looks like Andy and Homie may collapse on Maswell in the mid lane, get a beads out of Skilladon. Homie actually getting forced very low as Aegis used. Skilly tries to use his ult for peel, but he's just going down.
And now the drums come out from Anderson as well, keeping Moswell pinned in place. The Aegis now burnt, and Moswell will not survive much longer there. The damage out from Jig securing the kill for Scary D. Wobbin forced out in the mid lane, and he can't really do much against all 4 members here of Space Station Gaming grouped up. Homie FA
and again, the speed is up when Skilly is dead. Moswell and Skilly just being caught out of position far too often against this team. When you have things like a Thor and an Ardio, their dive potential is insane, especially with the range on the ultimate out of the Raijin. You can't be just walking through the jungle alone as if you're going to be fine.
Speaking about walking through the jungle alone, Warrior's going to be careful here. He's looking to try and defend this red buff, but he's going to have to give up the goose there with the rotation coming in from the other 3 members of Space Station here. Homie F in the right-hand side will push out the solo lane side of things as well as that returns back to the dual lane.
And whenever you're at a point like this where the map is kind of just not really that contested, you don't have the Gold Fury up, you don't have Portal Demon up, Space Station doesn't want to try to force a Fire Giant yet, you're really just trying to keep lane pressure, keep all the waves pushed, pressure out their jungle, get deep vision as you can see around their red buff and all of that, and to see if they can go for dive plays, get a few kills. In this case, they actually have relics down for Skilly and Maswell, and I think they'll force that again as soon as they can.
So picking your brain a little bit, Mike, about, you know, the situation here. If you are Noble, and we always ask this, but like, what do you do here? What's the game plan from Noble now? Is it still just like hold on for late, even though you mentioned Space have a better late game?
They basically just need to group. At this point, they're so far behind that they're going to get out-traded. You see Scary D just running 2 people down, just chasing Walrus forever. I don't think he'll get the kill, but he actually... Oh my gosh.
He might still be able to get a kill. Sprint pops as well, I believe, to keep the pressure on. Skilly, though, still getting some support, and it forces a shell too to make sure Skilladon gets away.
See, and this is why those ganks earlier in the game onto Scary D cost Noble so much. They got baited twice, and Scary D getting those kills is just huge for him. He's able to do whatever he wants now. No way they can stop him.
Meanwhile, left-hand side, where he's under pressure as Homie FA comes around the back as well. All that pressure from Scary in mid has pulled so much attention they've left Wowie on his own, who's now going to surrender his tier 1 tower.
See, and now all of Noble, because people are getting poked out, because people can't stay in the lanes against their 1v1 matchups, they're just getting completely caught out of position. Now, Scary D actually getting fully committed on, did use his Aegis, but will go down to basically off, basically 4 ults. Yeah, everything but the Morgan ult. The entire team just on Scary, a little bit out of position there. But in the end, it didn't really matter too much. They still got actives out of Wowie. They still got the tier 1 tower. And Scary should be alive before this Gold Fury is taken.
And talk about the Gold Fury, that's a good opportunity then for Space Station, knowing that Noble invested so much in that to maybe look potentially at that next Gold Fury. Portal Demon up around the same time, however. So there's an opportunity maybe for one-for-one trades across the map, unless nobody realizes it.
Yeah, I think if you're Noble, you cannot afford to give up both of these objectives again. That'll almost guaranteed result into a loss of Fire Giant as well if you give up portal control like that. So they really have to be around this Gold Fury. You'll notice they actually have 20 seconds left on Scary's respawn timer. So they have a 4v5 here for the time being, and we'll see if they try to force this Gold Fury.
Well, Gold Fury started up. Zap's the only one really here, now being joined by Aninster. And Homie, FA Will comes out, double tap on Wowie, and Wowie takes so much damage there. He's forced out, but Homie's already in the sky, looking to land. Didn't choose the target of Wowie, though. It was more on zone, as Walrus committed, but he's just not tanky enough to weather the storm coming out from Space Station.
Yeah, and I think the way Homie played that was actually perfect. It kept the entire team of Noble away from peeling from Walrus. The second Walrus's ult was down, you saw all Space Station turn on them. Now they're heading over towards the Fire Giant, and they'll be looking to siege. Scary D now respawned, able to zone over here, able to get the Fire Giant buff for himself. And then more importantly, you also noticed that Noble couldn't really fight into that because they were trying to force a 4v5, but Wowie's actives were down. He had to jump away from the Raijin, and Andy almost soloed him.
Well, it looks like Space Station tried to speed things up. They started the portal demon, changed their man, and went, you know what? We could just do the Fire Giant
And here you see that banner really come into play, putting it on top of the Fire Giant, everyone getting a little bit more DPS with the attack speed.
So Fire Giant goes down, portal demon soon after. This is Noble's last game, but it is keeping hope alive for Space Station. Obviously, it's a lot of hope that they need, but Mike, it's going okay so far.
Yeah, I mean, they basically need everything to go right, and that all starts right here. You can't take a team like Noble for granted, even though they're out of it and they can't make worlds. They still want to win. They still want to have fun together. So yeah. I like that Space Station kind of came out. They picked like an early game draft sort of, and had Homie and Scary pressure that side of the map, try to put their foot on their throats and just force this lead like they are now.
And when you mentioned that, when you talk about early game draft, you really just talk about Scary D, Homie, FA here in that compo.
Yeah, really just the plays that they were making. I mean, we saw that Jigs even got first blood, and it just didn't matter because their 2v2 fight between the Ardio and the Thor is so much stronger than the Ama and the Susano.
Well, if you're just tuning in, we saw Dignitas versus Noble earlier on in Game 1. Game 2 is Space Station versus Noble. The next two sets, very, very important. It's a double header for Energy. They're only one win away from securing a potential spot at Worlds for themselves here. Obviously, there's a chance of different tiebreakers, but their first game is going to be against Trifecta, a team that really needs to win this one as well, Mike, if they want to have a shot.
Yeah, another team who still has a shot, and they need to actually win at least 2 games today to clinch their own spot. There is a tiebreaker scenario that involves Space Station as well if they were to only win 3, but you never want to take it out of your own control. I'm sure Trifecta's going to look to come out strong.
And then the other one, if you're not a North American fan, well, you got a European head-to-head of Elevate versus Energy, which is another spicy endeavor. Have you got money on either of those two teams, would you say?
I would take Energy slightly, but I think Elevate has been so impressive to me this entire weekend. Yeah, only slightly.
Wow, I was expecting a little bit more. You know.
I'm just expecting that those two teams would have scrimmed a bit before this, and that Energy probably has an idea of how they want to deal with the Triple Guardian Double Hunter comp out of Elevate.
So, yeah, we'll see how those Energy games go, and the Elevate one a little bit later on. Right now, Space Station, though, in a prime position to close this one out. Is this a Noble you kind of expected at the LAN here, or have they underperformed? Have they done what we expected them to do? Have they at least
to be honest, I thought they were the weakest team. That doesn't. I'm not trying to. You know,
I don't. I think they know that too.
I'm not trying to disrespect them. I think that they have a lot of potential to grow, but for now, I think when you're going up against the world-class talent like this, it's really difficult. As we see Noble actually try to engage out of the Phoenix, forcing Zapman's beads. Homie, I believe, up in the air, going to look for a target. He's actually going to crash onto Walrus and use the remainder of the Raijin ult. Hachiman ult comes in, Ganesha ult. Walrus getting thorns, and he actually will be cleaned up by Scary D. Zap might die to the Phoenix forces his Aegis.
Had to Aegis away there. You know what, Mike? I think I'm just going to let you cast a rescue.
Oh, Maswell goes in and actually gets Andy's beads and Aegis out. Skilladon going to be able to clean that up with his ultimate. We see Wubbin jump in and stun Homie Faye. Noble's turning this so well. It's a 4v4 right now, and they actually have Scary D isolated here. That's the Aegis out of him. Susano too, and they interrupt the dash out of Maswell, turning into the Raijin. Great defense by Noble. It's actually something they've been known for, is their Phoenix defense. They always stall these games.
I'm going to go and get a drink, okay?
No.
No, you do fine. Like, you don't need me.
Nah, dude, I can't do that.
Do what?
I can't keep doing that.
Why?
It'll hurt my voice before tomorrow.
No, it doesn't.
Nah, I got a game, dude.
You need a voice for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Why? Are you shot caller or something?
Just so I can like yell at everybody, you know.
What's the main person you have to yell at?
Probably Baskin and Mass, just to like put them in their place, kind of.
Gotcha. So it's not even your own team you want to yell at; it's the enemy team.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes some sense. And I'll let you do that. If it was your own team, I'm like, you know, we could give them a bit of a respite from being yelled at by you, Mike, all the time. That'd have been nice. So 30 minutes in, it's kind of going as most people would have expected. Space Station Gaming would have been hoping to be in a much better position here today coming into it, sitting at 0-2 right now. This will put them at 1-2. Gold Fury due up in about 2 minutes time. Fire Giant still on 3 members of Space Station. But the good news is this is what we've seen a little bit more of this season, Mike, as time's gone on. The Phoenix defenses have got better. And is that because it is a little bit tankier as well? That obviously people will say that initially.
I think another thing that you'll notice is whenever teams are struggling, as Space Station did right there to Siege of Phoenix, if you just look at the engage, they don't. Ganesha not really the greatest at engaging under Phoenix. Sure. Same with an Ardio, same with the Thor. Homie really would have to lead in with his dunk, and that's not something you want. So whenever you have the defense out of a Hoyi ult that can just zone so much, same with Susano ult and Ama ult, to force people back. It's really hard to kind of fight while also hitting the Phoenix now with all those changes.
I think the big thing is that it's so telegraphed when Spacestation are going to engage, because it's going to have to be like the Dharmic pillars out of Ganesh. Talking about those, they're straight on Skillet's
Great wall
face.
and alt combo by Jigs and Homie, finding Skeleton out of position without his beads up. Wubbin also going to get engaged on. Actually, his mantle will save him for the time being, but still going to get chased down. You see the wall and the silence coming out of Jigs and Homie. So 2 picks basically for free. They should be able to get a Phoenix off of this, and then if they get another kill, maybe look to end the game. Otherwise, you'll see them just go towards fire.
Should Woman have ulted there after the hammer, maybe? Or do you reckon he was right to try and hold on to it?
I think that they were probably just way too out of position. Noble wasn't really around to counter-engage as Walrus tries to force them off, and Andy probably going to turn this with the Taiko drums. Looks like Walrus will be all right for now. Thorns force. But for now, Walrus has to go heal. They have a 5v1 on this Phoenix. Wowie tries to do what he can to zone them out. Don't think it'll be enough.
Won't be this time round, no. But Scarity's a little bit far forward here. Moswell going to commit. Nice little stun. Follow up from Walrus a little bit off the mark.
His Aegis is actually still down for a few seconds, but oh my goodness, Homie just shredding Moswell. Walrus also getting forced out, and Wowie as well with the Dharmic pillars coming back up from Jigs. The silence over the wall, actually a really nice play.
But it still turns around again. Zap's going to go out for Skeleton, but we did lose Homie FA there as well. Wubbin to fall next, and it's only Walrus left alive. Can Walrus defend this, Mike? You're standing up. You think it's over?
That's game over. That's GG.
100%?
Yeah, GG. 100%.
So this game then looking like it's going to go to Space Station for now. That's going to give them that 1 win that they need to try and stay in contention. It's still going to be a long old day in doing this. Zap's being zoned out by Walrus, though. This time around, he won't claim the life of